Hey yogi friends, Kit Kat here and welcome to Introduction to Breath and Yoga, your guide to getting on the rubber rectangle. This video is devoted to breath and we are going to master some techniques, or learn some techniques at least, that are going to help you to master your breathing. So breathing is probably the most underrated thing that you will do every day in your life. We give so much energy and effort to the food we're going to eat and what we're going to drink, who we're going to drink it with, where we're going to shop, what we're going to eat, what recipes. Think of all the cookbooks on your shelf that are dedicated to food. Do you have any books on your shelf dedicated to breath? I do, but I'm probably a little odd like that, and that's why you're in this class. So I have loads of books on breathing. Actually, I don't even have one cookbook here. Oh yes, I do. I have one cookbook here on Jamu here in Bali. But yes, I have more books on breathing than I do cookbooks. But for most of us, it's probably the other way around. More information on cooking and recipes for things that we're going to eat, as opposed to how to master our breath, right? So your breath is your most powerful tool. It's your effortless, silent superpower that kind of keeps us, well it does, it keeps us in this life. In yoga, breath is referred to as prana or life force, and if you, in TCM or Chinese medicine, it's referred to as qi. The beautiful thing about the breath is it connects us all. So the dogs are running around in the garden just here to my right, and the people that come and go in and out of my day and my life. If I hug someone close, the trees that surround us, we are all sharing oxygen and CO2 and all of these marvelous molecules that are here on this earth in our life. We are all connected by breath. So your breath actually impacts every aspect of your being, and every system in the body requires oxygen. From cognition to digestion, effective breathing can not only provide you with a greater sense of mental clarity, but it can also help you sleep better. This is where I'm going to go off on a little tangent for a moment. Maybe about 5 months ago, I read an article about mouth taping, and you're like, don't Google that. It will never go away. You'll have to delete all your cookies, right? If you're going to Google it, Google nasal breathing mouth taping. Anyway, I actually started this experiment because I read about mouth taping and I was like, right, well, I may as well try it. I wake up every morning with a dry mouth and I get up to pee in the middle of the night, which is super annoying. And I felt like, you know, I didn't really have really deep rested sleep, regardless of my meditation and the amount of physical exercise that I was doing. So I was right, I'm going to give this a crack. I got some 3M tape, so just the same tape that you would use to hold a bandage on. It's clear and white, and popped about 2 centimeters and just sealed my lips together. And then I went to sleep. And boy, did I sleep. It was fantastic. I did not wake up for the entire night. I didn't wake up to go to the bathroom. I didn't wake up with a dry mouth. My face felt rested and relaxed. My body felt energized. I had a super deep sleep, so I felt clearer when I woke up in the morning and felt like that overall I was just functioning better. So this is now something that I do every single night that I go to sleep. As we tape our mouths and we relax the jaw, we start to breathe through the nose. We activate the vagus nerve, which we'll get into that in a little moment. But that draws us into the parasympathetic nervous system, our rest and digest state, which drops you into your REM or your deep sleep a lot quicker, and helps to keep you in that space. So if you're opening your mouth during your sleep and you're breathing in through the mouth, this actually puts you in your fight or flight stage, which is what keeps us out of our deep sleep. Super interesting, right? So it can help you sleep better. It helps you digest food more efficiently. It improves your body's immune response, and it can reduce your stress levels. So the benefits of mastering your breath are physical, mental, and spiritual well-being. On top of that, better breathing and allowing your breath to anchor you enables you to sit longer in meditation or drop into that space more efficiently because you're calming the mind with the breath. So we inhale and exhale about 16 to 20 times a day. and we only eat 2 or 3 times a day. But as I said before, we spend way much more time thinking about food than we do about our breath. And our best breathing is done through our nose. So the nose is the primary breathing source, and this is a secondary one. And breathing through the nose, which is the process, it has actually about 30 different functions, the nose. It's quite extraordinary. And if you held say a pool table, a pool ball, like from a pool table, and kind of wedged that at the back of your head, that's about as much space, or wedged that in behind your nose there, that's about as much space as what the nose takes up in our heads, so including the paranasal sinuses and the airways down the back there. So it's actually quite a lot of space that the nose occupies, and as I mentioned, it has about 30 different functions. So if you're breathing through your mouth, which is your secondary system, you're just not getting all the benefits that you would get if you were nasal breathing, and we're going to get to some of those benefits. Many of us breathe through our mouths without even realizing the impact that that has on our health, and it's roughly about 50% of the population that will be mouth breathers. So if you're a mouth breather, you're not alone out there. In many different tribes, it's customary, like through South America and certainly in North America as well, that as babies, the parents would train the children to, after they'd eaten or breastfed, they would close the lips down of the children and train them to breathe through the mouth. And I also read this morning that in Mexico there was tradition within the school, if they saw children breathing through the mouth, that they'd get a slap on the back of the head as a reminder to shut the mouth, because it was viewed as not only being not only would it cause ill health, but it was actually seen to be rude as well, as within the parameters of that particular culture. So interesting there. When we breathe through our nose, it's our first line of defense, and it actually removes airborne pathogens. So anything that's not needed by the body. So if you're breathing through your mouth, that whole process of removing airborne pathogens is gone. And it's not only the little nasal hairs, the silica that are in the nose that you can quite often see, and sometimes you want to trim. Don't trim them too far back, they've got a job to do. And also the nitric oxide, which we're going to talk about in a moment as well. Both assist in that process of collecting and saying no to airborne pathogens that don't have any benefit to us. As the O2 moves through the airways, it takes with it nitric oxide. So nitric oxide, I think it was 1998 that was awarded Molecule of the Year. So it's super recent. Before that, we didn't really understand the impact of nitric oxide on the body, or the importance of the nitric oxide within the body. So NO is actually produced right through our whole body, and so it comes from, I mean, you might see supplements if you are in a health food store or in a supplement center or in a gym, but you can get NO, or get the body to produce NO within itself just by eating green leafy vegetables, and the beets, I think beetroot is another really big one for producing nitric oxide within the body. So the other place that the nitric oxide collects, it's actually made in the paranasal sinuses here. So as you inhale the breath, you're actually getting all of that beautiful nitric oxide to flow in through the body. NO is a vasodilator, meaning that it widens or opens up our blood vessels and to improve circulation, and that enables the oxygen to move through the smooth tissue of the body and to all of our different organs. I'm going to have some visits from some puppies behind me here. So it means that during the process of that vasodilation, where we're opening up the veins, that we actually get that oxygen going to the tips of our fingers, up to into our busy brains, into our heads and into our busy minds, all the way into our gut and down to the tips of our toes. So when you are breathing through the nose and oxygenating the body more effectively, it impacts your overall health. If you're breathing through the nose, you just don't, and you're not going to get the same benefits as breathing through the nose. So nasal breathing also activates your parasympathetic nervous system in keeping us calm and balanced. So I mentioned before that the parasympathetic nervous system is our rest and digest state. So when we breathe through the mouth, we're actually going to activate the sympathetic nervous system. And so that's the one that is our fight or flight. So you're like, makes you go, and you can just even think of the noise. What happens when you feel overwhelmed? You're kind of like, I'm going to take a gasp, or if you feel surprised, and that takes you into that state of being ready to like, there's a dinosaur, I'm going to go. But we don't have any dinosaurs anymore, but we're still in tune with that fight or flight response. Now, it only takes about 90 seconds, so 1.5 minutes to activate the parasympathetic nervous system by shutting down the mouth, breathing through the nose, and calm rhythmic breaths. And we'll get to some of those breath demonstrations a little bit later in this tutorial. The activation of the parasympathetic nervous system takes about 90 seconds, breathing through the mouth, even inhale, even or slightly elongated exhale, and you'll start to feel a sense of calm, but also you'll notice that the mouth is producing more saliva, and that's a really key indicator to activation of the parasympathetic nervous system. Breathing through the mouth, as we've spoken about before, helps us sleep better at night, helps us wake up more focused, remain hydrated, which means that you'll be able to discern between what's a hunger pain and what's dehydration. So a lot of the times we miss that messaging, and we're actually thirsty, but we reach for food instead. So as we stay hydrated, you're no longer going to get those that desire to quench thirst, which we quite often mistake for a desire to hunger. So it actually balances out the body's digestive system and keeps that messaging of do I need food or do I need water, keeps those two messages quite clear as well. So important here. The next most important molecule that we're going to talk about is CO2, or carbon dioxide. So I think there was a lot of bad press for CO2 for a long period of time, and even in yoga today you'll hear a lot of people, well, I quite often say it to myself, I quite often say it too, exhale, release what no longer serves you. So getting rid of, we have this sense of we need to get rid of, like our exhale breath is getting rid of things that we don't want. And that is certainly true to an extent. However, CO2 is super important within the body as it actually triggers our response to breath. So it triggers our need to breathe, so for the activation of the diaphragm. So when we're low in CO2, this signals to the body our need to breathe. Amazingly, we can increase our tolerance for CO2 or by practicing breath holds. So the longer that you can hold your breath, the more tolerance that you can build up to CO2, and this increases or helps increase oxygenation of the blood. CO2 again is another vasodilator, and again makes sure and helps out making sure that all our organs, brains, kidneys, liver, everything else, lungs, heart, is getting as much oxygen as it needs so that it can function optimally. And you have to ask yourself this question, like, am I going to take care of myself right now? What's the best way? What's the best I can do for my body? How can I maintain this optimal health? And our breath is that space where we have the opportunity to do that. Yet we're not taught how to breathe in school. Our parents don't tell us how to be better breathers, and that's not their fault. They just don't know or didn't know. You don't go to the doctor and they go, oh, just check your heart rate, and I'll check your pulse, I'll check your heart rate, I'll look in your ear, I'll look in your eyeballs, maybe I'll get the stethoscope out, but they don't actually measure your blood oxygen ratios, and they don't check your entire respiratory system to see all of the functionality of the organs and seeing whether your breath is in the right place, and also is mastered. And even, when people are suffering from asthma, the first port of call is medication. And, two of my favourite books, like, at the moment, like if you had to ask me, do I have cookbooks or do I have breathing books? Well, I have more breathing books than I do cookbooks. I don't have one cookbook. But James Nestor, Breath, the Science of a Lost Art, an absolutely fabulous book on breathing. And then the other one is Patrick McEwen, The Oxygen Advantage. And Patrick McEwen is actually an expert in assisting people with severe asthma or any kind of asthma, and assisting them to effectively cure themselves of that asthma with better breathing. And once we start to cure that asthma or better through our breathing, even allergies and different things or ailments tend to disappear. So super duper worth reading, and I've listed both of those books in this training manual for you. Excuse me. So the more tolerance that we can build for CO2 assists us in increasing oxygenation of the blood, meaning all our organs and our brains get freshly oxygenated blood. So a lot of us breathe up into the high chest, and this is kind of a form of hyperventilation. It's that high chest breathing, which is often considered, and it is often a sign of stress and anxiety. And it becomes a super vicious circle. So you're breathing through the chest, and the more you breathe through the chest, and as we've mentioned before, this activates your sympathetic nervous system, so it takes you into fight or flight, that anxious state. So you can see that it could be self-perpetuating. It's kind of a case of which came first, the chicken or the egg. Did I have anxiety or stress? And am I exacerbating that with the style of breathing that I'm operating or functioning with right now? So the lack of CO2 and oxygen forcing us to breathe faster, which in turn forces that high heart and high chest breathing, confirming our anxious response. What is stress? Stress is our physical and mental response to working hard towards something that we actually don't care about. Passion is the direct opposite of that, where we're actually working, and work doesn't feel like work, like what I'm doing right now, because I love sharing this information with you. I actually don't feel like I'm working. I just feel like this is a part of my day that I love. I've got Charlie sitting next to me. I'm here in Bali. The garden's green. We're going to go for a walk on the beach later. Yeah, I don't feel like this is work. As we learn to build our CO2 resilience or resistance, we learn to get comfortable in uncomfortable situations. And so you might have heard of Wim Hof, and he's another world-renowned breath expert. And he introduces to many people the art of breath holding, as does Patrick and James and many other people that I study with. But he became quite famous for being able to hold his breath and increase that CO2 resistance. So as we start to find ourselves moving through these challenging spaces with the breath, it makes our lives outside, where we're regularly breathing and monitoring the breath, so much easier. So some of the tools and techniques that I'll teach you through this class, I use them all, and right now, I probably check in with my breath maybe once an hour, and you can do a test where you can set yourself a timer on your phone, on your watch, and just check in, or post-it notes above your desk, just to check in with your breath every couple of hours and see where you're at. Because like anything that we talk about as we move through this online course, it's about creating new rituals and new habits, so that those little rituals that you start to create become habitual in your life, so you no longer have to think about them. They become an automatic response. So checking in with my breath is an automatic response, and it's at such a point now where I don't go, oh, I need to check what my breath's doing. My body will automatically, or my brain will automatically tell my body to check in and make sure that we're doing the best that we can, given the set of circumstances in which I'm operating. So this overall has probably made me a much calmer, balanced and considered human being than so many different things that I've done in my life. And when it comes to yoga asana practice and that combination, this is where I first learned to connect body to breath. Even though I'd taught aerobics for 12 years and competed, I was always at that, and interestingly enough, did have my Vo2 Max Test tested, which is you try and get to your maximum lung capacity, and you force your respiratory system to work at its maximum, right to the point where you're either about to vomit, fall over, or both. Yeah, and that tests your lung capacity. And it's something that athletes do and test so that they can improve their aerobic capacity and moving into their anaerobic capacity. Yeah, so even throughout all of those years, I understood that breathing through the nose was a better outcome for me as I was talking or singing or training, that I would feel a lot calmer and a lot more settled and in control of what I was doing. But it certainly wasn't until like deeply studying the breath and understanding how it impacts the body and all of the research that's been done in the last sort of 15 to 20 years. And, you know, my study, I started teaching probably teaching aerobics when I was 18. So that's nearly 32 years ago. So certainly not a lot of this information was around back then. So I guess there's a couple of things too that I just want to say that are really important, which is as we move through, you might be going, oh, I don't really, my breath's okay. I know how to breathe, blah, blah, blah. Yep, yeah, it's an automatic response. It's part of our automated systems in the body. It'll just naturally occur. But can we be better at it? For sure. So this is the place where I say that you are capable of change and that there are always improvements that we can make in our lives and in our physical body. You can learn anything with practice. So if you keep practicing it, it will become, as I said, this little ritual will become a habit for you. Discomfort leads to growth. So when we are going through or learning some of these new breath techniques that perhaps have these little breath holds in them, and even for me, sometimes that freaked me out a little bit, but as we move through that and you become more familiar and you practice some of these exercises, that's where the growth happens. So action activates learning. Practicing what we learn, putting it into action, teaching the body and building those synapses between the heart, lungs, the respiratory system and the nose. It's just about retraining those systems. Take ownership of where you're at now. If you're a shitty breather, accept that that's the case and move forward from there. And that was me. I was a shitty breather. So I was like, oh, could I improve this? I so could. And I went down, willingness to tape my mouth, case in point. Create habits and rituals that support your growth and change. Fall in love with the process. Learn the tools so that you can take action where you need them. So I certainly fell in love with the process, absolutely. So when we're going to look at some breathing patterns. So when we are anxious, we have longer inhales and shorter exhales. So you kind of find yourself breathing like this because you think, or as we've talked about before, when we have that anxiety response, it's that, am I perpetuating which comes first, the chicken or the egg? Am I feeling that high chest, high heart breath? Or can I slow that down so that then I can slow down and drop into that parasympathetic system? So as we move into calmer waters, you notice that your inhales become shorter and your exhales become longer. And so that takes you out of fight or flight and into the recovery, so finding a better balance in that space. This kind of breathing activates the parasympathetic nervous system and we relax and anxiety disappears. So this is that part of this video where I say to you, you are in control of your stress, overwhelm and anxiety. You are in control of how you are each and every minute of the day, and that might be a really, really tough thing to say, or to hear rather. And it certainly would have been for me when I had anxiety and depression and was spinning a little bit out of, was waging a one-woman war against the universe, spinning out of control. And the blame was everywhere else. And as I came back into that state of calm and found a little balance through my journey through yoga, and that journey never really ends, but I'm certainly in a way better place than what I was before. You start to realize that the answers aren't on the outside, they're actually on the inside. And on the inside, I mean, they start with the breath. There's no two ways around it. And if I knew then what I knew now, I certainly, as a psychiatrist, a psychologist, or even a doctor, would be teaching people how to breathe properly as the first port of call if they have stress, anxiety, or overwhelm. I'm hopping off my soapbox now. So when we're in that thoracic state, so when we're breathing up here, quite often people will, really well-meaning people will tell us to take a deep breath. So that's all well and good. I took that deep breath, now what? And what happens is we have all this emotional layering that stacks down in the gut. And so by the time I was about 28 or 30, I just had this giant rock living in my gut because I had stress, anxiety, and overwhelm, and everyone's telling me to take a deep breath, and I would, but no one told me what to do after that. And the answer is that when you take a deep breath, exhale slowly and rhythmically. Let it go and just let it go, let it flow. So you need to exhale the breath, and that exhale needs to be slow, calm, and it might take you a few goes to get to that, but that's okay. When you regulate the breath in this way, it not only gives you relief from stress and anxiety, making you feel calm, it regulates your peripheral nervous system, which looks after your heart, lungs, kidneys, and blood flow, digestion. So it means happy organs and happy internal functions, happy gut, happy heart, happy lungs, happy brain. So it means that there's no dis-ease within the body. And I use those two words separately, dis-ease. So right now you can try this. You can place your hand on your heart and you can see where that breath is happening. So is it up in the high heart, in the high chest, or can you feel that breath drawing a little deeper into the belly? How does it feel? Where do you feel your breath going? Is it just sitting up in the top here, or perhaps you can feel the expansion into the ribs, maybe even into the back body? Because the lungs don't just sit up here, they draw all the way down into your diaphragm, and they're not just in the front section behind your boobs, they're actually right the way around into the back ribs, into the rib cage, which is kind of like the hidey hole for the heart and the lungs. So breathing for yoga asana, it's not really too different to breathing through real life, or breathing on the mat is not too different to breathing off the mat. We do have a couple of different breathing techniques, such as Ujjayi Breath, which is largely introduced through Ashtanga yoga and in some of the older texts, and that's a controlled breathing practice. Nadi Shodhana and Kapla Bhati, but Ujjayi Breath is probably the one that you'll come across most frequently in your yoga practice. But really, any of the breath techniques that I teach you here, if you find yourself in your yoga practice getting out of breath or feeling short of breath or a little frustrated, any of the breathing techniques that I teach you through this workshop are actually going to super help you in that situation. A lot of our yoga movements are also timed with the breath. So I guess the rule of thumb is as you extend the body, that becomes an inhale. And as you allow the body to retract or get a little bit smaller or grow small, what am I trying to say? Grow small is probably a good one. That's the exhale breath. So as you shrink down, that becomes your exhale or your surrender. As you inhale and expand, that's where you're able to take more oxygen in or more oxygen into the body. The important thing to note is that if you need extra breaths, you can take them. There's no point in kind of going inhale, 2, 3, I've run out of space in my lungs, I can't do it anymore. You know, you're better off kind of going inhale. If you get halfway, exhale, inhale again. Take that little pause and listen to what your body's saying at that point in time. So we're going to move into some breathing techniques. So I have got a slideshow that goes with this, and what that runs through is these different breathing patterns that we're going to do through the next few minutes of this video. And this video content or that slideshow, you can screenshot it, you can save it on your phone, super handy if you kind of get yourself in and you want a uplifting breath, or if you need something to calm and balance you out and you kind of, oh, where was I at? You can screenshot those so that you have them on hand at any point or time. Now, you can do any of these breathing techniques. You don't have to be on your yoga mat. You can do them in the car. You can do them while you're grocery shopping. Probably Kapla Bhati we don't want to do while we're grocery shopping, but certainly some of the other breaths, box breathing, and no one will ever know that you're doing it. Also, there's no limit to the number of times that you do it. There's not like when you're at the gym, you just need to do 3 reps of this. that doesn't happen. You can do this as many times as you need until you get the desired result. So i.e. till you feel that state of equanimity or your equilibrium return. You might want to drop into a space of calm for meditation, so until you feel that state of calm resonating within the body, or you might want to something that's going to uplift you and energize you. So as you start to feel that uplift and energize, and you can move on with whatever it was you were going to do. And you can drop into these anytime, any day. These are your tools, and they're going to be with you forever if you learn them and make them habitual. So during this process, be kind to you. Like even learning the first breath, which I'll teach you, Tranquilizer Breath, which is 4, 7, 8. And it's an inhale, a hold, and an exhale. I felt so frustrated learning that breath. And my BOLT score, my blood oxygen level test, would have been really low at that point because, I'd been in a state of anxiety and that, thoracic breathing for such a long period of time that I really didn't have that light and right balanced breath happening in the body. So my self-talk was awful. And so if you lose the counts or you forget where you're at, don't worry about that. Just jump back in and you'll be absolutely fine. Your breath isn't going to get angry at you. In fact, just going to love you all the more for coming back and working through that. So we're going to look first at calming breaths, then we're going to look at balancing breaths, then we're going to look at energizing breaths, and then we've got one more breath, which is lion's breath, which is kind of like super fun and gets a category all of its own. So the first one that we're going to look at are these calming breaths are going to take you out of fight or flight, so out of that desire to run away from whatever's happening, and it's going to drop you into that calm center and return you to that place of equanimity and allow you to feel a little bit more centered. So the first is 4, 7, 8 breath, or tranquilizer breath. And it's an inhale for a count of 4, you're going to hold for a count of 7, and then you're going to exhale for a count of 8. All of these notes are in your PDF, so you have this on hand all the time. So inhale for 4, hold for 7, exhale for 8. So it's going to look like this. Inhale, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Exhale, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Inhale, 2, 3, 4. Hold, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Exhale, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So again, you can do that breath as many times as you like. For me, I like to do that before I go to sleep, and I probably do maybe 6 rounds, and that kind of drops me into that space where I'm like, time to go to Z-zone. The next one is 4, 2, 6. So quite similar to our tranquilizer breath, just a shorter amount of counts, so not as big a breath hold. So 4, 2, 6 looks like this. Inhale 4, hold 2, exhale 6. Inhale 2, 3, 4, hold 2, exhale 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Inhale 2, 3, 4, hold 2, exhale 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So a little bit shorter in terms of the counting, but still takes you into that space of calm. The next one is 2, 2, 3, 3, 4, 4, 5, 5. So it's pretty easy. 2 breaths in, 2 breaths out. 3 breaths in, 3 breaths out. 4 breaths in, 4 breaths out. So however many counts it takes you to breathe in is exactly how many counts it's going to take you to exhale the breath. You might say at this point, but everyone counts differently, and it's completely up to you how to count. The goal here is to move slowly and rhythmically. Now, slow and rhythmic for you, if you're in a thoracic breathing state, might be 1, 2, 3, 4, or it might be 1, 2, 3, 4, which is more around a second per count. But this is completely up to you. And as you practice some of these habits and practice some of these breath techniques and make them habits, you will find that breath breath counting slows down for you as well. So let's have a look at this 2, 2, 3, 3, 4, 4, 5, 5, and you can go all the way to 20 if you like. It looks like this. Inhale 2, exhale 2. Inhale 2, 3, exhale 2, 3. Inhale 2, 3, 4. Exhale 2, 3, 4. Inhale 2, 3, 4, 5. Exhale 2, 3, 4, 5. And as I said before, you can take that all the way up to 10 to 20, and you can count backwards again from there if you like. So these are your calming breaths. The next one is half-half. Now this is a really easy one to remember. However many counts you breathe in, double it for the exhale. So if you breathe in 2, you breathe out 4. You breathe in 3, you breathe out 6. You breathe in 4, you breathe out 8. So it looks like this. Inhale 2, exhale 2, 3, 4. Let's take the number 3. Inhale 2, 3, exhale 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Let's take the number 4. Inhale 2, 3, 4. Exhale 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Pretty sure that you understand how that works. Whatever the inhale count is, double it for the exhale. So this is actually one of my favorite ones. And this humming breath actually comes from what we know to be Omkar meditation, which is the ancient yogis had it right when they this 3-syllable word, which is said to be the sound of enlightenment or the first sound of the universe, Om. Om. That 3rd syllable, is actually a hum. And so as we move through this and you elongate that hum at the end, that becomes your Omkar and enables you to drop into that meditation. And it's a repetition of that Om and bringing you into that state of vibration that drops you into this particular Omkar meditation. So we're not going to use Om as our first port of call during this humming meditation. We're going to use something a little bit more neutral. So for many people, if this is your first experience of yoga or Sanskrit, making that sound can be a little bit, oh, what's going on here? But the yogis had it right. The last third or the last syllable in Om is that humming sound. So amazingly enough, humming, not only is it super fun and you can't stop smiling, but it actually increases the intake of NO, nitric oxide, into the body. What? It actually increases the production by 15 to 20% in the paranasal sinuses. So as you vibrate while you're humming, that vibration in there creates all of that beautiful nitric oxide. So as you go to take that next inhale, all of that beautiful fresh nitric oxide plows through the body, sending all of these wonderful new oxygen into your brain and all your other organs, fingertips, all the way to your toes. So what's not to love about humming? So what this breath looks like is an inhale breath for 5 counts and then just exhale for 15. Use 15 as a guide. If you can go longer, go longer. And you can do this sitting in your car, you can do it roaming around the grocery store, in the kitchen, you can hum to your favourite song with your kids. Sometimes I used to teach a humming meditation where I just tell someone to find their favourite song, whatever popped into their head, and to find their space or their comfortable seat, and then to hum that song to themselves. Singing is also one of the most beautiful ways to activate the vagal system, so the vagus nerve, which runs all the way from the back of the cranial down to the gut and is often referred to as the wandering nerve because it's the longest nerve in the body. So all the way from here down into the gut, amazing. Anyway, let's look at humming breath. We're going to inhale for 5. yum yums. I love humming breath. Omkar is actually one of my favorite things to do. And if you would like to book a breathwork session with me, I'm more than happy for you to do that. We actually use Omkar in that breathwork session. And we're learning breath awareness techniques here so that we can learn to master the breath. Breath work is slightly different to that, where I will take you through a series of double inhale, double exhales, and we'll use some different techniques to learn to increase our capacity to breath hold, and then using that Omkar with that humming breath to drop us into a meditative state. So a very beautiful experience. If you'd like to book that session with me, you are more than welcome to do so. Just send me an email or drop me a DM. So we talked a little bit about the vagus nerve then. Humming actually, as I said, stimulates the vagus nerve and it dampens your stress response because the vagus nerve activates the parasympathetic nervous system. So what happens is the vagus nerve says, oh, okay, right, I'm going to activate the parasympathetic nervous system now and tell them to sit down and rest because the brain is safe. Brain, you are safe. That's pretty much what the vagus nerve says. And it's actually in charge of the heart, the lungs, the digestive system, and certain reflex actions. Like the vagus nerve is in charge of coughing, sneezing, swallowing, anything else, and vomiting. Eee! So next time you vomit, just blame the vagus nerve. When we start slow rhythmic nasal breathing, this tells the vagus nerve that we are safe. It in turn activates the parasympathetic nervous system. We stay calm, the heart rate drops, and remember I said before, we feel the production of saliva in the mouth, and that takes roughly only about 90 seconds to happen. So, which means every 90 seconds it is possible for you to find your place of peace. So what's next up? Next up is balancing breath, and these techniques will help you find that place of equilibrium. So the previous one was calming, so dropping us into that calm place. This is where we just go, I'm just going to do a little check-in, balance myself out. So the first one is 5-5 or 6-6, so 5 counts in, 5 counts out, and this is said to be the ideal optimum counting number of counts to breathe in and breathe out to bring all the organs and your internal functions into balance. How beautiful is that? And it's as simple as this: slow rhythmic inhale, slow rhythmic exhale. Inhale, 2, 3, 4, 5. Exhale, 2, 3, 4, 5. Keep that going. Slow and rhythmic balancing breath. This trains your breath to be slower and balance out the energetic center of the body. And this is the technique that I drop in and check in with my body every hour. And this is the one that has become habitual for me, so I don't even have to think about it anymore. My brain says, time to check, and checks in and sees where my breath is at. And as a result of that check-in, I'm a far healthier, happier human. Our next one is box breathing. So box breathing, literally 4 counts in, 4 counts to hold, 4 counts out, 4 counts to hold. So in our yoga practice, that breath holding is actually called kumbhaka. The breath hold at the top where you're holding the breath inside the body is puraka, and the exhale breath where you're holding the breath outside the body is called rechaka. I don't expect you to remember any of that, but I did because I thought it was so fascinating. I love Sanskrit. So box breathing is as simple as this. Inhale, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4, exhale, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4. Inhale, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4, exhale, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4. And you can repeat that as many times as you like. The next one that we're going to look at is something that you might come across in your yoga class, and it's called Nadi Shodhana. And this is alternate nostril breathing. And I'm going to take my glasses off for this because this one requires the use of our hand. So we're going to use the thumb, and that's going to go on our right nostril. The pointer finger is going to go right between our eyebrows on our third eye, and the middle finger is going to go over the left nostril. So there are some really specific techniques around this as you dive deeper into the practice, which ask you to block the nose by coming in contact with the bridge of the nose and this cartilage that's right up in here. But for the purpose of learning this today, I'm not going to ask you to really dig into the nose. That is a particular yogi technique that will come over time. But let's just get the action right first. And we're going to always start with the inhale breath, and that's going to start through the left side. So the feminine side, and the right side is said to be the masculine side. So if you're breathing through the right side of the nose, this is the side that's energetic and uplifting and actually activates the left side brain. And when you balance that out and breathe through the left side, this is the calming side that activates the right side of the brain. Super interesting stuff if you want to read a little bit more on that. James Nestor goes into some great detail around that in his book, Breath, The Science of a Lost Art. So let's look at Nadi Shodhana. Let's block off the right nostril with the thumb, press into the third eye, and use that left forefinger on the left side. You can hear I'm like talking through my nose. So I'll release the left. And it goes like this. Inhale, lift right, exhale, inhale right, close that down, exhale left, inhale left, close that down, exhale right, inhale right, exhale left, inhale left, exhale right, inhale right, exhale left. So I could feel right now that I'm breathing through my right side, and it's probably because I'm making this video tutorial. But a fascinating thing is that you actually, the body automatically switches you from left to right roughly every 90 minutes. Super fascinating. And inside the nose, it's actually the same like erectile tissue on the nipples and the clitoris and on the penis that actually lives within the nose as well. And that's why, like, well, I could go into some really super detail here, but I won't. If you want to read more about that, you can too. Interesting enough, erectile tissue. There you go. So the next one that we have is Nadi Shodhana with box breathing. So this is a combination of our box breathing and our Nadi Shodhana. So again, I'll just take my glasses off, and I'm going to use my thumb on my right, my forefinger, and my middle finger. And I'm going to inhale, hold, exhale, hold, inhale, hold, exhale, hold, inhale, hold, exhale, hold, inhale, hold, exhale, hold. So that one takes a little bit of coordinating. So one of my top tips around this is actually, if you get super confused during this process, is to just draw a box, and then you can follow the box around with your eyes and alternate with your fingers, left and right. So it might take a little bit of practice to get into that one. And if you have a yoga teacher handy, always beautiful to get them to help you, to guide you through that practice. So activating breaths. So these are techniques for when you feel sluggish, if you need a little bit of an uplift, you wake up in the morning and you're not feeling like you've taped your mouth and you're as energized as you could be, or maybe you just haven't had your first coffee yet. Try some of these. So 20 connected breaths. This is 4 conscious breaths in and out of the nose. And then breath number 5 is going to be a longer inhale and a slower exhale. So it's going to, and then you do 5 sets of those. So we're just going to do 2 sets in this demonstration, but because it's 20, you want to do 4 sets. So it looks like this. So I can already feel, and that's just after 2 sets of that, I would have another 2 to go, that I have a little bit of heat or tapas in the body, maybe a little bit of breaking a sweat. I already feel like there's more oxygen in my body. Like I have just, even though those first 4 breaths were quite solid, that last breath where I slowed that right down and brought myself back into that state of equilibrium, that really, really made me feel energized, made me feel a little bit tingly in the fingers too, which is fantastic. So breathe and hold. So this is inhale, exhale 10 breaths, and then hold for a count of 10. So you can inhale, exhale for 20 breaths, hold for a count of 20. And this actually increases your BOLT score, so your blood oxygen level test, and it's about training some of those breath holds. And you can do this one while you're walking, you can do this one while you're seated. The reason we do it while we're walking is because it's really easy to pace it out against each step. So it becomes like a little bit of a game. Super duper game to teach your kids. 10 steps forward, hold the breath. 10 steps forward, hold the breath. You can make a little song out of it. So it looks like this. So that 10th breath is your inhale, hold, and then you move into the exhale, release, and then start that 10 breaths again. You can, again, move through that 10 counts, 20 counts, 30 counts, 40 counts, as long as you would like to do it. Don't overdo it. Listen to your body. See where you're at. See if that's working for you today or not. So inhale, exhale, 10 deep belly breaths. So needing to find a little bit of energetic, you're just going to inhale, but you're going to use the diaphragm and the belly. Really important that those inhale breaths engage that belly, drawing that breath down and deep. The next one is Kapla Bhati. So I'm going to not get too naked here, just a little bit. I'm just going to, so you can see my belly. Kapla Bhati breathing, I recommend that you do this seated or kneeling, not necessarily in Sukhasana or cross-legged, often being because our knees will sit up higher than our hips and it creates a little bit of restriction, so not enough room for our belly to move. So super important that you do this either kneeling, you can do it sitting on a bolster or a block, or seated on a stool as I am here. What we're going to do is take an inhale breath, and with that inhale breath you're going to feel the expansion of the belly, so the diaphragm drawing down, increasing lung space and drawing in the oxygen. Then you're going to have this forceful exhale. So as you exhale the breath, belly draws back into the spine, and the natural response of the body is to take oxygen in again. And so the only thing that you're going to be conscious about is bringing that oxygen or fresh air into the body using the strong using that inhale and then the forceful exhale. The natural response of the body as you exhale the breath is going to be to draw the breath in. All you need to do is start to learn to control the diaphragm. So it looks like this, and you can pop your hand on your tummy. You can do as many rounds as you like. Now, I just demonstrated 2 different variations there, and if you were quick, you would have picked it up. The first one was through the nose. Inhale through the nose. The second one was inhale, exhale through the mouth. So I actually, for Kapla Bhati breath, the inhale, exhale through the mouth is going to be an easier system to learn. As you get more experience, breathing, in and out, in through the nose, out through the mouth is going to be a technique that might take you just a little bit more time to master. So that is a Kapla Bhati breathing. Those are our activating and uplifting breaths. And as mentioned, we have one last breath style, which is called lion's breath. And I'm just going to pop my stool out of the way, and I've got my yoga mat here. I'm going to stand with my feet apart, my toes turned out. I'm going to take this like kind of ballet plie, hands resting on the knees. So you can sink down in here, and I've kind of got this like little bend happening in my spine there as well. So I'm kind of quite comfy in this space. And you probably don't want to do this in the shopping centre. Maybe you do. Maybe it's a car park thing. Probably do this one at home or with some friends. Take an inhale breath. Gaze up towards the sky. As you exhale, shake and let go. Inhale and release. So you can either keep the hands rested on the thighs there, or you can take that big inhale breath and use the arms, engage the whole body, and shake it out on the way down. So lion's breath, for obvious reasons, got its own category there. That can be a super fun breath to play with, a great one for kids, especially if you need to get them out of whatever strange energetic space that they're in and disrupt their thoughts and bring them back to a place of equilibrium, creating more joy and happiness for them as well. But lion's breath, like you can't help but smile when you do that. So you can get your whole body active doing that one too. So what we want to remember as we come to the end of this masterclass, or this particular class on breath, at any point in time, regardless of anything else that's going on in your life, it's just you and your breath. Just sitting here, you and me, we're just breathing and talking. It's just you and your breath. So whenever you need to, you can tune in. If you've forgotten that connection, you can drop in. It's not going anywhere. And just check in with you and see where you are at. It's easy to bring our culture's competitive nature into our yoga practice too. And we're all in unique and different parts and places on our journey. But as you start to drop in and connect to the breath, you start to create this sense of pratyahara. The brain can only think of one thing at a time. So if you find that connection to breath, that sthira sukhanasanam, that steadiness and ease, that connection, that dropping into the self, into your own place in time, everything else that's happening in the yoga class or around you ceases to exist. And this is where your practice starts to move or become a moving meditation. So that's a really beautiful experience to have. The other thing to remember is when you come into the breath and you drop into that, becomes an act of kindness that you're looking after yourself. So if you find yourself in that place where there might be a little bit of negative self-talk, drop into the breath. And the breath is just going to nurture you with loving kindness. And it's something to be super grateful for every single day. Post doing some of these exercises, or certainly doing a breathwork session with me, is a perfect time for meditation. So as I mentioned before, Omkar is a breathing technique that drops yogis into meditation. And some of these breathing techniques, I personally love the humming technique, excuse me, to drop me into that meditative state. And I might do that 5 or 6 times. I actually use Omkar. You can use the 5 inhale count and hum. You're going to get the same effect from doing that, and gradually you can open the mouth and add that om sound to your humming. Beautiful way to drop into meditation. So when you are doing some of this breathing practice, props, totally great. You can do some of these activities lying down, probably Kapla Bhati, lion's breath, obviously, they're not going to be lying down. But if you are lying down, I would recommend not propping the head up, but just allowing your airways to be open and doing their own natural thing. A little bit of a tuck in of the chin into the chest, just to lengthen out through the cervical spine. And try, instead of placing the bolster or a pillow behind the head, pop it under the knees here. And what that does is just takes a little bit of pressure off the low back. So it just makes being in that space a little bit more comfortable. Great tip for Shavasana too, if that's something that you are still finding a wriggle round. Bend the knees slightly, pillow or bolster up underneath the knees, even your blocks, takes that pressure out of the low back and allows you to sink and surrender. So I think that we have covered everything in this breathing class today. Next up on the agenda is bend. As I mentioned earlier, these breathing techniques are in slide format. That video lives directly underneath this one, so you can jump in and see that. I will also post that slide numerous times in our Facebook group so that you can drop in and see that anytime, and that way you'll be able to save it to your phone as well. So someone's obviously just getting ready over the back here to head down to the beach, and that's what I'm about to do now. And Charlie is about to come and go tap me on the thigh and say, "Mum, it's nearly 6 o'clock, it's time to go to the puntai." So I am off and out of here. Have a fabulous day, my yogi friends. Don't forget to breathe and practice some of those techniques and tools that we have learned in this class. And I will see you on the next tutorial. Namaste.